treat yourself. You know what I
Treat
mean?
yourself.
I think it's important to treat yourself. Important to enjoy these little things. So you enjoy that little sparkling fruit drink, you know?
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Oh, by the way, have you heard of the con woman from Connemara?
The con woman from Connemara.
Yeah.
No.
It's good. It's just a super quick story. It just kind of came out recently. I thought it was kind of funny. So there was an American couple, Cindy and Jerry Rabbit, who they owned a sweet little holiday spot down in Connemara in Ireland. Mm-hmm. And they randomly met another American woman named Brenda Riley. And they hit it off, swapping information, becoming best buds.
Right.
Then when the Rabbits, they went back to Boston, but they kept in touch with Brenna, and they actually ended up leasing their holiday home to her.
Okay.
Fast forward a few months, and when the Rabbits, when they swung back to Ireland, they found their holiday home fucking ruined. It was just wrecked.
Made shite of the place.
Oh, completely. It was dirty. Things were smashed everywhere. There was cat shit all over the place. So it turns out Brenna's life story was mostly fiction, except for the American part. She was American. She was from Massachusetts. But the Rabbits, they ended up getting their legal squad involved, and they took action. They reported to the Residential Tenancies Board, and surprise, surprise, it ain't the first time that Brenda's pulled out a stunt like this, and she actually owes quite a bit of money. But as they dug deeper, they actually found out that she had a run-in with the FBI over a decade ago as well. So she had been impersonating an FBI agent, taking it so far that she was telling neighbours that she was in some sort of supervisory capacity.
Wow.
To the point where she actually hired 2 people to work for her in the air quotes FBI, and she was even planning on taking her new recruits over to Germany on an official FBI work trip.
That's wow. Freaking
Madness.
cool.
Yeah, but she was found guilty in the federal court for impersonating an FBI agent, which is like a federal offence.
Yeah.
And she was sentenced to like 30 days in prison, and 4 months house arrest or something like that. But 4 years later is when she arrived in Ireland and started like conning her way around and wrecking houses. And where is she now? The fuck knows. No one knows where she is.
She's
Haven't got a
still
clue. She's
out there.
still at large. Yeah.
What's her name? Brenda?
Brenna Riley.
Brenna.
Yeah.
Brenna Riley. All right. If you're listening, Brenna, we're coming for you.
They actually done I can't remember, it was in one of the newspapers, but they did like on RT, I think they did like a little documentary thing about it as well. It's very good.
Wow,
really
cool.
interesting.
All right, Brenna.
Yeah.
Right. We should have her on the pod. That'd be great.
Yeah. Hop on.
Yeah, come on.
Chat to us.
We know she's listening.
Yeah. Oh yeah, big fan.
Exactly. All right. So, hey, you, and welcome back to another episode of the That Chapter podcast. Me here. Oh, shit. Actually, I was actually going to record something for Instagram because I thought it'd be kind of funny. Just wave. There we go. Okay, that's great. So, hey, you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and, well, welcome. That's 2 welcomes. I always do that. I always make that mistake. Welcome back to third.
Welcome.
Yes, exactly. Something back to another episode of the That Chapter podcast. I'm joined once again by Dirty Keith over here.
Cool.
What's up, Keith? How are you? The folks at home want to know. They've been asking. They were like, "How is Keith? We want to know." Status update.
Oh, thanks, guys. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
How are you?
Watching any good movies lately?
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the.
Oh.
No, I'm joking. Go on. Yeah.
Okay.
I want to know.
Well, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I asked you a question. You blew it. All right, let's get into the episode. Any spooky tales?
Not
No.
this time, man. It's been quiet. Yeah, it's been a quiet week. Yeah, no ghosts,
All right.
unfortunately. But,
All right, well, okay, maybe next time. Maybe next time. You know, we're a week closer to us recording. In fact, when this comes out, will it be around? I'm trying to think of when this comes out. It'll be around the time we will be pretty soon after this episode comes out. We'll be recording the episode, filming the episode in your house. So
Yes.
it'll be on That Chapter Podcast YouTube channel.com. Give it a go.
It's gonna be a good one.
All right. Well, today we also have another good
cold,
one.
Actually.
What?
It's gonna be cold.
Yeah.
I was
It's pretty cold.
Yeah, I was up in the attic there last week. We were really late with putting away our Christmas decorations, and I finally got up in the attic, and the attic is like it's Baltic. It's cold. So
is the little Schlitter still up there? The Hurley ball?
I'm not touching it.
Is it still there?
Yeah, I'm not touching it.
Wow.
I feel it's one of those, like if I move it, I feel I'm
Oh man, don't
start off a chain reaction or something.
The bad juju.
So-
Don't touch it.
Yeah. So that's still, you can see it when you come over.
No, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
What if it's gone?
bring a coat because it's gonna be cold.
What if it's moved?
Oh,
Or it's
yeah.
gone.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Or there's like something else, like a catcher's mitt or something.
yeah. And then a baseball. And then you go back. It's beautiful.
Yeah, there's a whole team up there.
All right. So today we're talking about the case of Charles David Lawson. Today's L1 takes us to Germantown, North Carolina, a place about as rural as it gets, with a population under 800 people, the majority of them being farmers and other agricultural workers. For such a small community, it's been around for a very long time, having been founded at the tail end of the 18th century. That history earns it the prestigious title of being the oldest community in Stokes County. Ding ding, that's a double ding. That's a congratulations, guys.
Well done, guys, you did it.
Now, you don't need to be a genius to work out that it's got its name from the large number of Germanic immigrants coming to the area after serving in the Revolutionary War, though a lot of the Germans, I believe, were on the British side, so that didn't go too well for them. Hessians.
Oh yeah, we are very stoked to be here in Stokes County.
Yeah, well, Americans, yeah. Now, our story doesn't take us quite back that far, but rather a couple of hundred years down the line to the early 20th century. The 9-person strong Lawson family were typical of the area. A large working-class farming family, there was little about them that drew, really, any attention at all. The Lawsons were originally what was known as sharecroppers. That means they didn't own the land they farmed, but would rather, they would give up a portion of their crop to a landlord in return for working the land. Only in recent years they were able to finally buy their own farm, located off Brook Cove Road, deep in the farmland of the area. And despite having a large mortgage, there was, it was still quite an achievement for any family in their position.
Like these sharecroppers, they were generally quite poor. Sharecropping, they kind of faded away in the 1940s because of the Great Depression and more farms getting more mechanized, which is a good thing because the practice, it really hurt tenants. Lots of them had to deal with like crazy high interest rates and unpredictable harvests and shady landlords who kept tenant farm families seriously in debt.
Right.
So for the Lawson family to get out from underneath a landlord and buy their own land, it was a huge achievement.
Yeah. Well,
fair play to you.
Yeah, exactly. You beat me to the punch. The Lawson family was made up of the patriarch Charles David Lawson, his wife, 37-year-old Fanny Lawson, and their 7 children. The children were 17-year-old Marie, 16-year-old Arthur, 12-year-old Carrie Lee, 7-year-old Maybelle, 4-year-old James, 2-year-old Raymond, and 3-month-old Mara Lou. The large family were far from remarkable and tended to keep to themselves. What little was known about them was mostly from rumour and seeing them run their errands around town. Charles was said to be quiet, polite, and a little conservative. He was also said to be a bit of a hook and bully around the Lawson home, including being capable of violence if rubbed up the wrong way. He only liked being rubbed up the right way.
Wee. It's basically every father from this time period.
Basically, he sounds like a perfectly normal freaking 1920s guy. Beat the shit out of the old wife and kids, working the farm, pretty quiet and conservative, probably just drank a lot, having a good time.
Yeah, living his best life.
Yeah, exactly. Good for him, right? That's what I say.
Actually, my wife had to ring up our car insurance is under my name, but my wife had to ring up to change something on it. But for her to change, they had to get my permission. So I had to call up our insurance broker and give them permission to speak to my wife. So I text my wife, like, you're good to call now. I was like, I wish we could go back to the old days. That was great. And she wasn't happy about that.
Didn't enjoy that one.
No, she didn't like that joke at all.
Yeah. We talk about how bad things were for like women and minorities back in the day and how things have improved societally to today, which is great. But we never talk about how good things used to be for the guys and how, what we've lost.
I was like, where are you going with this?
I don't really know where I'm going with this either. I don't. It's a hot take.
It's very brave you to say like.
Yeah. Probably it's when I regret it as soon as it came out of my own mouth. Now, shortly before Christmas 1929, things looked like they were going well for the Lawsons. They'd been able to acquire their own farm and had welcomed their most recent child, Mary Lou, just 3 months ago. Having earlier lost the child to illness, their 6-year-old son, the noise of another baby in the house was a welcome break from the grief.
The child mortality rate this time was still quite high. I think for every 1,000 babies born in the 1900s, about 20% of them didn't see it to their 5th birthday.
Wow, that's wild.
Very high.
Yeah, that's crazy. Still, many in the community and family were more than a little perplexed when, in the run-up to Christmas, Charles announced to the family that he'd decided they should have a family portrait done. Now, this wasn't a cheap endeavour, and the Lawsons were less than affluent. It's not exactly the kind of thing you would expect them to decide on a whim to get done. Now, by the way, family portrait, it's a picture, a photograph. It's not like for some reason when I was initially reading into this, I assumed family portrait was like a painting.
Oh yeah.
No, it's not. It was a old timey like picture. Have you seen the picture?
I have. Yeah.
It's very fucking creepy.
It is weird.
It's really, really disturbing.
It's very strange. Yeah.
Like just so for the folks at home, obviously who can't see it, Google it, or let me just tell you about it because it's like
paint us a picture, Mike.
Right. So it's the family. They're all there. They're standing, getting their picture taken. Kind of. They're all standing a little bit awkwardly, but it's in black and white, obviously, and they're dressed in 1920s formal style. But they all just look creepy. I don't know. There's something like none of them are smiling. They have the eye. It's like something to do. I don't know if it's in all pictures from like this time or just some, but their eyes look dead. Like they're kind of glazed over. Their eyes are all really, really pale. Like they've got like you can only see the faintest circles where their irises would be. So it gives them this like almost like pure white eyes. They're not smiling. Some of them aren't even looking at the camera. They're looking off, I'm guessing, at the photographer. The kids are the only people who actually look normal. The 4 adults, which is Charles's wife, and then their 2 oldest children, all look like they're dead.
Yeah. I wonder if it's got something to do with like the long exposure rate, which is why their eyes are so weird. I think even like the layer or where they were standing within the photo, where they were positioned in the photo was a little strange because on the end, so there was 2 rows and then the back row it was Arthur on the left, then it was
Marie, the oldest daughter,
Then it was Marie, and then it was Charles, and then it was Fanny.
Yeah, holding the baby.
Yeah, like why wouldn't you have the mother and father in the middle?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in fact, it's going like down in height. It's it's weird. It's just a very freaky picture, which kind of adds another element to this kind of already pretty creepy case.
Yeah. The most amazing thing is how they got all their kids to sit still for so long.
Yeah, right. That's it. Yeah.
Like I said, like the exposure rate, I think it could take up like several minutes where they had to sit there. Where like we tried to take my daughter's passport photo the other day, 20 minutes, still didn't get it.
Yeah, wow.
Nightmare. Yeah.
Jesus. Okay. Yeah. So they did fairly well. Hey, listen. Back then in the days, you
get
listen,
the back of the hand.
Yeah. No problem getting a fist out. Not a bother on them. So not only was it, this very expensive to get done, but there's also a whole bunch of other expenses thrown in. Each of the family members would require new clothes, suits for the boys, dresses for the girls, huge outlay for anyone, let alone a farming family barely scraping by. Nevertheless, Charles pressed on with his plan and had the family knitted out in some far new threads and took them to pose for the portrait. The very, as we said, creepy portrait. The whole thing, though a big and apparently unnecessary financial obligation, was done with, and had it not been for what came next, would have been a completely unremarkable event. On Christmas Day 1929, Charles gave his eldest son, 16-year-old Arthur, permission to go with a friend into nearby Walnut Cove to buy ammunition for some Christmas Day rabbit hunting. Something that was far from uncommon and had become a tradition for many rural families around Christmas time. This was also one of the reasons given as to why no one was alerted by the abundance of gunshots coming from the Lawson farm. It was perfectly normal to hear shots ringing out on most days in the rural county, but especially on Christmas morning. While some speculated that Charles may have favoured Arthur and sent him away to spare him that morning, the truth is the decision was likely a lot more cold and pragmatic. 16-year-old Arthur had grown bigger and stronger throughout 1929, and Charles feared that Arthur might be able to step in and put a stop to his murderous intentions. If you look at the portrait, he's a good couple of inches taller and bigger than his dad. It looks like he probably could have stopped.
Oh, definitely. I definitely urge you to go look at the photo, but he looked like he would kick the shit out of him.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, even just looking at pictures, like, I mean, I know people look older back in the day than they do now.
Yeah.
But he looks like he could be 25.
Yeah, he's built.
I mean, working a farm, but I think people just looked older back in the day. But he easily could have taken his dad by the look of it. So yeah. It's alleged that Arthur had already begun to intervene when his father had become physical with his sisters and other siblings. Like most cowards and abusers, Charles didn't like anyone standing up to him, especially when they were able to physically back themselves in a confrontation. So by sending Arthur off to the store, he sidestepped any potential for Arthur to wrestle away the weapon and put an early end to the carnage. The first victims of the Christmas Day rampage was 7-year-old Maybelle and 12-year-old Carrie Lee, both of whom had been shot down outside the barn with the family's shotgun. Charles then proceeded to the house, loading 2 fresh cartridges into the shotgun as he walked. Once there, he met Fanny sitting on the porch, raised the gun, and at close range pulled the trigger again, killing his wife instantly. Entering the house, Charles found his eldest daughter, 17-year-old Marie, who was rushing around the kitchen, panicking and looking for a place to hide after seeing her mother shot dead, but she was too late, and Charles fired another shot, striking and killing Marie, who had been happily baking, looking forward to Christmas lunch with her siblings. Somehow, things then got even darker. Rather than reloading the shotgun and quickly dispatching the remaining 3 youngest children, for some unknown reason, Charles chose to prolong their deaths. First, he bludgeoned 4-year-old James and 2-year-old Raymond to death with the butt of his gun. Then he moved into his and Fanny's bedroom, where 3-month-old Mary Lou was sleeping peacefully in her crib, completely unaware of the utter chaos erupting just meters away. Charles then murdered the infant in the same way as his 2 youngest sons. How anyone could commit such a cold and violent act is unfathomable, let alone against his 3-month-old daughter.
I think this is like one of the worst family annihilator cases I've read. It's just the sheer violence and brutality. The whole thing is sickening.
That afternoon, relatives arrived at the Lawson Family farm, expecting to have the family greet them and spend a couple of hours enjoying some Christmas cheer. Instead, they were met by the sight of Fanny's corpse laid out almost formally on the porch where she had died. Only, her body had been moved. Her body had now been positioned to be laying on her back, arms folded across her chest, with a pillow under her head. Of course, they immediately sent for help, and at the time no one knew what had happened. Inside the house, Marie, James, Raymond, and little Mary Lou were all found in the same manner as their mother, laid outstretched, with arms folded and pillows placed gently under their heads. Out near the barn, the 2 girls were found in the same position, though instead of pillows, the girls had rocks placed under their necks, propping them up. The whole scene was just pure nightmare fuel. Fanny and the 6 children were dead, murdered. Arthur, Charles, and the family's dogs, Sam and Queen, were missing. Had they done this together and fled? That's what people who arrived thought. Had one kidnapped the other, or had some drifter come through and killed everyone, and the bodies of Charles and Arthur were yet to be discovered? Maybe. The answers would come soon, along with the day's final victim.
The whole scene is like textbook family annihilator stuff, from perpetrators with mental illness or disorders like depression, paranoia, schizophrenia, and personality disorders. The killer would usually see themselves as a failure, which, combined with serious money or social issues, thinks the family can't go on without him. So the killings are like an extended suicide or mercy acts. However, even though the actual murders can be really violent, the person treats the bodies with a lot of care, often placing them in a really loving way, which kind of seems to be the case here.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Within just a couple of hours of the murders, several representatives from various authorities, including the sheriff and deputies, as well as several locals who'd come for a gander, were gathered at the Lawson farm, when suddenly there was a 5th and final crack of a gunshot that shook a black cloud of birds from the trees deep in the woods and drove a collective shudder through everyone gathered. Instinctively, everyone there looked to the north and to the direction of the blast. Officials cautiously headed off in the direction of the noise, hoping not to find what they expected. Beyond the tree line, they found a strange and gruesome sight. Charles was laid dead, clearly having taken his own life with the same weapon he'd used to wipe out his family. The 2 dogs were sitting there watching over the body. Creepily, there was a trail of footprints. See, as expected, there was a single trail of prints leading into the woods, those belonging to Charles, of course. But it seemed that once he'd gotten as deep into the woods as he wanted to, Charles had apparently walked in a circle around the same tree, possibly for hours, before finally committing to one last act of violence. At the time of his death, Charles had nothing on his body except 2 slips of paper, receipts actually, that each had 3 words scrawled on them. One said, "Trouble can cause," and the other said, "Nobody to blame." Exactly what the cryptid notes were supposed to mean flitted away with Charlie's life. It's fairly certain that the notes were only partially completed, and they certainly go some way to showing what Charlie's thoughts were, and they were clearly erratic and he wasn't thinking coherently when he committed the crime. Whether or not he was completely delusional and suffering a major break from reality is unknown.
Maybe he was suffering from writer's block.
Maybe he was so
couldn't take it.
frustrated.
How do I finish a sentence?
Yeah, all right, time to kill my family. That'll help.
There were a number of red flags as well on the run up to the murders that would suggest that he was having some sort of mental breakdown or manic episode. So Charlie, he'd get up in the middle of the night, dropping to his hands and knees for some intense praying. His wife mentioned that she'd wake up to the sound of his prayers, and when she asked him if everything was okay, he wouldn't say it and he wouldn't spill the beans.
Yeah.
Neighbours mentioned that there was also loud, heated arguments between Charlie and Fanny as Christmas drew near. A few months before the murder also, Charlie's brother attempted to chat with him on the street, but Charlie's words, they were just all over the place. He spoke in a very confusing way and eventually just walked away in frustration. So it does seem there was something not right going on in his head.
Yeah.
Something's gonna broke.
The autopsies of the 7 victims, plus Charlie, took place that Christmas evening. The 8 bodies actually had to be moved from the funeral home in Walnut Cove to Madison's Yelton funeral parlour, as their first destination was found to be far too small and under-resourced to handle such a large influx of bodies in one go. To autopsy and embalm 8 bodies is obviously no small task, let alone all in one evening. Stokes County Coroner, Dr. C.J. Helsebeck, assisted by Dr. Spotswood Taylor, who was the brother of Stokes County Sheriff John Taylor, confirmed what the scene and observed physical evidence had suggested. The official causes of death had the 3 elder children and their mother shot, the 3 younger children bludgeoned to death. He also made several interesting observations about Charles's brain, noting that it was considerably smaller and more underdeveloped than expected in a man of his age. Dr. Taylor eventually took Charles's brain back to Johns Hopkins, where he usually worked. He'd actually only been home in Stokes County visiting his brother and family for Christmas. Once back at Johns Hopkins with the proper facilities, he was able to put Charles's brain through a more thorough examination. Sadly though, these days the brain has been lost, which is a real shame for criminal science, as advancements in the field would make a modern study incredibly interesting.
How do you lose a brain?
Yeah,
That's just
this thing happens. Like, isn't JFK's brain like missing or something?
just carelessness.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, lost it again. Wait, I just want to double check that.
While you're checking,
Okay.
It
is missing, by the way.
It
JFK's
is missing.
brain is missing.
So here's an interesting tidbit. The bodies of the Lawson family, they were initially taken to Knight Funeral Home in Madison, North Carolina. The reason for this was simply the place had an elevator, and there were quite a few bodies that needed to go upstairs to the funeral parlour. T.B. Knight, he was the owner of the funeral home and took care of bathing, embalming, dressing and preparing each member of the Lawson family for their burial. In 1923, the funeral homes, they operated a bit different than they do these days. They were small offices with an embalming room and a casket display room, so viewings of the bodies weren't held at the funeral home back then. After the body was prepared, a family member would head to the casket display room, they'd choose one, then the body would return home for the viewing, and the funeral would take place there, or at a church, or at a cemetery. However, the Lawson case posed quite a challenge. So there was 8 bodies, 7 caskets, and with limited space at the Lawson family home, the bodies were taken to the place that you mentioned, Yelton Funeral Home, for the viewing. The bodies were viewed at Yelton's the next day, and if you stand out where Knight Funeral Home used to be, you'll spot the building that was once the Yelton Funeral Home. So they were quite close together. There was also a TV series, 28 Days Haunted, and they actually did an episode in Knight Funeral Parlour where the Lawson family was embalmed. The building is now owned by a dry goods and county store, with the upstairs converted into like a museum that traces the history of the building and the town. And the museum also delves into the Lawson murders and the building history as a funeral parlour.
Okay.
And visitors and employees, they have reported allegedly seeing a young girl wearing white dress roaming around the building. The owner recalls one time one kid about 3 years ago grabbed his dad's arm and said, "I'm not going up there, there's a little girl standing there." They also reported other unexplained activity like pictures and objects in the building that have moved around without any explanation.
Wow, that's creepy. Kids are creepy.
Kids are creepy.
Yeah. I've heard that story before, that like kids can like see things that other people can't see. I've heard that even within my own family. Like looking out a window and saying, "Who's that man out there?" And then adults say, "There's nobody out there."
Yeah, your brother, we were in the pub that time, he was telling us, this kid, what was it? He seen it was that man in black.
Yeah.
And there was, your brother didn't see anyone there. And then it was, what was it? It turns out that there was a fire in the building.
Right. Yeah, it's in the basement of their building. Yeah.
And someone had died there, so it might be like someone that was charred up.
Yeah. That's a different time.
Yeah.
This is 2 different stories. Yeah. But yeah, that freaked the heck out of me. Has your young daughter ever said anything creepy?
She always says creepy shit.
Okay, yeah.
Non-stop saying creepy stuff.
Anything particularly creepy?
Not like with seeing stuff, but she just says weird things all the time. Like I think I've told that story before. She always like tears the head off of Barbies and puts it in the fridge and weird serial killer stuff like that.
Yeah,
but,
she doesn't need to say anything. She's already creepy enough.
Yeah, and she loves still loves everything with Halloween. So like she's like she loves the clown from It.
Yeah, Pennywise.
Yeah, she thinks he's hilarious.
He is pretty funny.
He is pretty funny, but like for like a kid, like she's 3 and she's like, he's hilarious.
Yeah, it's not like terrified. Because I mean, I remember seeing It, the original 1990s Tim Curry It, and it like scarred me for life when I was a kid.
Yeah, no, she's loving it.
All right, good for her. Well, hey, listen, fair play to her. You know, enjoying the horror stuff young. That's the way to be.
That's it.
So, on the 27th of December 1927, only 2 days after the crime, the entire family, minus Arthur of course, were laid to rest in a large grave, all sharing a single headstone at Browder Cemetery just outside of Germantown. 7 coffins were lowered into the ground, with each of the elder children and Charles having their own casket, but Fanny and the infant, 3-month-old Mary Lou, they were buried together. Mary Lou securely swaddled in the arms of her mother.
It seems a bit weird that he was buried with them.
Yeah, I know. Depressingly, it wasn't too long after the funerals that the Lawson family home was busy with life again. Now, though, the house had taken on a whole new life and purpose as a macabre attraction. The idea was the brainchild of Charles's brother, Marion Lawson. Now, if you think that's just maybe a wee bit fucked up, well, his brother also thought it would be a cracking good idea to not bother cleaning up the bloodstains in the house, including the bloodstains left behind by the young children who were brutally murdered, leaving the house in its disheveled state as a way to add, quote-unquote, authenticity. Hey, listen, there's brains still on the floor. It doesn't get much more authentic than that, my friend.
It's a vibe.
Yeah, definitely a vibe. In his defense, though, he claimed that it was necessary to open up the house to visitors in order to help the last surviving Lawson child, young Arthur. He had a mortgage to pay off now that he was the man of the house. A touch of extra sadness is that the Christmas cake that 17-year-old Marie had spent the early morning baking for the family, that none of them would go on to taste, was still sitting out on the kitchen table.
Do you know the visitors to the house, they actually started picking at the raisins on the cake to take as souvenirs?
Oh my god, that is grim.
Isn't it? So they had to cover the cake with a glass dish, which actually helped preserve the cake for like years to come.
Oh wow.
So also maybe it was the copious amount like brandy and rum in the cake that maybe helped preserve it more than nothing.
But still, that's weird. Just for like blood on the fucking raisins.
I know, yeah, just taking raisins and putting in your pocket. What a weird thing to do.
Yeah, gnawing on that later. And a lot of people visited the house. Apparently it was a real hit. Another interesting local legend that has grown up around the Lawson house. One of the many visitors was none other than infamous bank robber and gangster John Dillinger. Dillinger, having only very recently escaped the clammy hands of the law, was so intrigued by what he'd read about Charlie Lawson's crimes that he made a beeline for the scene, despite him being one of the most wanted men in the country. Maybe he himself took a little raisin to go.
Just showing up with a fake beard and glasses.
Yeah, exactly.
Who is this Dillinger?
Now, the great mystery around the Lawson family massacre isn't the usual whodunit. The question is, why in the hell did Charles Lawson suddenly decided to kill not only himself, but his entire family? And then put their bodies, lay them out like with pillows under their heads. Now, there are 2 leading theories behind why Charles did what he did. The first and leading contemporary theory was that Charlie had suffered some kind of head injury in the weeks prior to the crime. Of course, at the time, head injuries and mental illness were far from the well-studied fields that they are today. It's widely thought that Charles had recently taken a bonk to the noggin and subsequently gained a much shorter fuse than he had previously displayed, and even then the fuse was never particularly long. There are conflicting reports here, as I've been unable to find anyone at the time confirming that Charles suffered such an injury, but if he did, there's certainly no official medical record of it, but then again, that's not unlikely or unusual given the times.
Apparently he hit himself in the head with an axe.
He did?
That's what I read. Yeah.
Really?
And some accounts I heard he hit him. I don't know how he did it. But that'll do it.
That'll probably, okay, there we go. Then we can take it as gospel that he, like, obviously, the sharp he could have done help.
Hey guys, there's something in my head here. Oh my god. I haven't, because I've read through a couple of things, and not all of them say, a lot of them say what you say, where it's conflicting, but then I've also seen some reports that some family members or neighbours have mentioned that he managed to hit himself in the head with an axe. So, I don't know how he did. Maybe bounce back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, there you go. Charlie took a blow to the head with an axe, and if he did, it's entirely possible that it could at least have contributed to his fatal actions. It's medically accurate to say that TBI, or traumatic brain injuries, can often lead to people displaying quite drastic personality changes. It's also possible for victims of brain injuries to show diminished control of their emotions, or even to have extreme emotional responses that are disproportionate to the triggers or their circumstances.
There's so many serial killers associated with having brain injuries at some point in their life. Where, like, a lot of these cases, they usually stem from like a childhood injury to when their brain's still forming. So it's interesting that this could have been from a brain injury later in life.
Yeah. I mean, his brain was smaller. I don't know. He chopped off part of his brain. I don't know. But yeah, no,
took an axe to the dome, man.
Yeah. One that always struck with me was the case of Cosmo DiNardo. He's a guy, young fella, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. He murdered 4 people. And he was a kid, kind of a rich kid growing up. He was always kind of fine and dandy. And then one day he grew up in the middle of nowhere, and he was on his ATV like one day, and it spun around, and he fucking cracked his head off a rock, essentially. And he was trapped under it for a time, I believe. It's been a while since I covered the case. But and ever since then, he was never right. And then he later went on to murder like 4 people. And that's like, it doesn't often. I watched a couple of documentaries about that case, and none of them mentioned brain injury. When I was covering it, I made sure to mention it because it's like, that seems likely why he ended up killing people. I mean, the most famous example of this is probably another family annihilator, the WWE wrestler Chris Benoit. Benoit was by all accounts a nice, quiet man, despite being very intense in the ring and taking his profession very seriously. He was known to be a backstage enforcer and a bit of a bully at times, but when news spread through the production team and Benoit's fellow wrestlers that he hadn't shown up to a live show, and even his closest friends who he'd worked with in the industry couldn't get a hold of him, no one could have imagined the reality of what had happened. So, after responding to a request for a welfare check from his employers at the WWE, police found Chris Benoit dead, having committed suicide aged just 40 years old. A horrific tragedy, no doubt, and if it ended there, Benoit would have been eulogized as a great of the industry, as indeed he was. The WWE, well, WWF at the time, even aired a special episode of their weekly show that was dedicated to Chris Benoit. Womp womp, only then news broke of what had actually happened. Benoit's last act before taking his own life was to destroy his legacy by murdering his wife, 43-year-old Nancy, and their 7-year-old son, Daniel. No one could believe what had happened, and up to this day, Benoit's name is still kind of thought of as pretty shit. Prior to the incident, he'd been a hero, and now he went from hero to zero. In the search for answers, Benoit's brain was studied by scientists looking into the effects of trauma on the brain. The thinking of many years was that, brain bruising or concussions was very much something you recovered from and didn't have any lasting damage. It's only through the study of deceased victims of TBI that we now understand such injuries much better. Benoit's brain was said to resemble that of an 80-year-old Alzheimer's patient. There's plenty of examples of this. 2011, David Duerson, 2-time Super Bowl champion with the Chicago Bears and New York Giants, he took his own life after years of struggling with mental illness, depression, and he chose to shoot himself in the chest because he wanted to leave his brain behind for science, to understand the effect of concussions, TBI, essentially all that stuff. And so, Charles Lawson, working on a farm, as you said, maybe he had suffered repeated head injuries throughout his entire life. His brain maybe never developed properly because it was supposed to be a lot smaller, and maybe the last final, like when he hit himself in the head with an axe, that was like the straw that broke the camel's back and caused him to kill everybody and himself. And as you said, maybe it was like that group suicide or whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, because I know with those 2 cases you're mentioning, I think that's like repeated, consistent trauma to the brain, adding like small injuries constantly over time. I wonder if with Charles Lawson it was like that, as you said, where he had injuries, or it was just that one significant impact injury to the head. I wonder if there's a difference. I wonder if like the brains would look the same of having like consistent injuries over time, and then also like having like one massive brain injury if the end result of the brain is the same or not.
Yeah.
I'm not a brain surgeon.
Hey,
I don't
listen,
know. If you're listening and let us know. Drop a line.
Hey, listen, your brain surgeons listen to this podcast. Yeah, right, good one. Yeah. Now, another theory about what really happened. And this line of investigation originated, or at least become publicly known, with the release of a book about the Lawson family slaughter. And it's a very incestuous theory about what really happened. In their book, 1990 book, White Christmas, Bloody Christmas. Come on, guys, that's a fucking terrible name for a book, by the way. White Christmas, Bloody Christmas. Come on now.
You can do better.
By M. Bruce Jones and Trudy J. Smith, the authors first suggested that small town rumors about Charles and Marie, his eldest daughter, 17, had been having a secret relationship. And those rumors existed in Germantown going back to the time of the murders. The book had the claims attributed to the trusty old anonymous source, wink wink, but literally less than 24 hours before the book was due to be published, the authors claimed to have received a phone call from a descendant of the executed family, one Stella Lawson. Stella had already been interviewed for the book, and hadn't previously mentioned the rumors of incest and abuse, but Stella revealed in this new conversation that she had once overheard a whispered discussion between her mother, Jetty, her aunts, and in-laws during the wake following the family's funeral. Wow, what are the odds? Hours before the book is going to go into publication, somebody calls in randomly, hey, we already spoke, but guess what? I just remembered.
I was lucky.
Yeah, very, very lucky phone call, wasn't it? So apparently, Stella, apparently Stella told the authors that the family had supposedly been chatting about concerns about abuse between the father and daughter, and they'd been chatting about these concerns as if it was fact and not speculation. Unfortunately, Jetty died in 1928, just a year after the murders. So of course, Stella was a young child at the time and could easily have misheard or misinterpreted what was being discussed. I mean, what are the fucking odds that happens? Yeah. Hours before the book is published, oh hey, this random speculation, I'm here to tell you what happened. And guess what? If the book was published in 1990 and her mother died in 1928, it's like, how old would she have been when she heard these rumors at the funeral?
Oh yeah, she would have been young.
Yeah, like really young.
A child, yeah, she was a child.
Yeah, she's like probably like 5 at most.
If you're a child, these sort of rumors aren't being told directly to you. She would have overheard it from someone.
She would have overheard. Who remembers conversations from when you're 5 years old?
I don't remember.
I don't remember anything. But the same authors appear to favor this theory, though, and put all their stock in it when they published a follow-up book, The Meaning of Our Tears, in 2006. Better title. This time, they claimed they'd uncovered more contemporary witnesses to the rumors. The book alleges that Marie's best friend, Ella May, had shared with several others that Marie had told her in confidence that she had fallen pregnant, and the baby was a result of her father's abuse, and even worse, her mother was aware of the situation. Though many believe the stories of a scandalous relationship between the two, who really knows, but it's thought to be a theory as to why Charles decided to murder everyone. After all, it's hard to look past the fact that an in-depth post-mortem investigation was indeed performed, and that would have been almost comical negligence or incompetence for the well-qualified doctors to not have noticed that one of their subjects had a baby. On the other hand, it's entirely reasonable to speculate that Charles took a bump on the head and didn't seek medical help. I think that's probably a more likely theory. As we said, he was a farmer. Growing up, he probably would have had bruise and knocks almost every other day.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I'm leaning towards Charles knocking himself in the head, making him go as mad as a bag of spiders.
But I also think this. The portrait. The family portrait.
What's with the portrait?
The haunting family portrait that was taken right before the murder. Very creepy picture. What was the reason behind it? Why have an expensive portrait done if he was planning on killing his entire family? If it indeed was planned. Maybe it was spur of the moment. Well, who knows? Potential answers are as broad and varied as, the murders themselves. Many have offered the theory that Charlie just wanted to have something, left behind of people he knew would be dead soon. Though why anyone would want a picture of it remains to be seen. But there you go. I mean, it's a very creepy picture. I think the picture was haunted.
Maybe he was going for a before and after.
Hey, yeah, maybe he was. Maybe he was.
I wonder if when he was in town, like buying them new clothes for the portrait, he's just like, hold on to your receipts, guys.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. I think the picture is a very haunting picture. I think the picture drove him insane.
Okay, I like that.
That's my theory. I have nothing to back it up.
Yeah,
but it makes for a good horror movie.
That is
and
good.
That's what I'm always
very
leaning
like
towards.
Lovecraftian.
Yeah.
That's good.
Exactly.
Okay, that is what happened.
Well, do you have any theories?
No. Well, I didn't until right now.
Okay.
I like the portrait idea.
Yeah,
that's
I think
good.
that's
a really
what
good
really
theory.
happened. But there you go. That's the story of the Lawson family murders. Pretty interesting tale, and a man just went insane and murdered his entire family for seemingly no reason at all. We have theories, but nothing solid. Another happy Christmas to those guys, I guess.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
Happy Christmas, you filthy animals.
Well, there you go. That ends this whole episode. What are we talking about next week, Keith?
Oh, I think we're talking about some snipers, are we?
Oh, yeah. Next episode, actually, I'm not sure if it'll be a two-parter or not. We will see, but it'll be a long one. It's a story I'm very, very excited to get into. Next week, we're going to be talking about the DC snipers. It's a story I've always wanted to cover because it's fucking whack.
It actually, like, I was reading through some resource. It reads like a movie. It doesn't seem real.
Yeah, I know.
It's crazy.
Such a great one.
Yeah.
So look forward to that, folks at home. And here, listen, that will wrap up the That Chapter podcast for today. So thank you so much for listening. Me and Keith appreciate it a lot. Be sure to check out episodes when we post them every Monday morning. Or maybe it's afternoon, I don't know. It's 7 a.m. where I am. God only knows what time it is where you are. Why don't you let me know? Let me know in the comments below. But yeah, Keith, final thoughts. Always like to hand it over to you. You know, wow me.
Yeah, I guess if you're swinging an axe, just be careful, guys. Don't hit your head.
There you go.
Killing your whole family.
Yeah, consider me wowed. All right, thank you so much for listening. It means a lot. And all right. Keith, you want to do your patented...
I'll see ya.
There he goes. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye. His wife, 37-year-old Fanny Lawson, and their 7 children. Yeah, exactly. You know, good for him, right? That's what I say.
Jealousy.